Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and I just wanted to reach out to my brother priests and to those others who you're in a position of, how do you say it, being fathers without a family, or being fathers who you have a family but you can't reach them because of where we're at right now. How do we properly father? How do we properly shepherd? How do we properly help serve and lead our people in the midst of a crisis? And that's the thing, is like to be able to acknowledge that this is a crisis, and in so many ways, a crisis. Gosh, you hate to say it, but crisis can be opportunity. We know this, right, as priests, that when people go through these big transitions in their lives, births, marriages, deaths, crises, that the questions come up. The questions of like that we would ignore before this come up to the surface, and a lot of people are looking for guidance. Of course, we say, I would offer guidance, but what can I do right now because I am stuck in a quarantine where I cannot speak to my people? So that's what I want to speak to for a bit. First, I want to think kind of big, large term. Is that the right word? Kind of large scale, kind of maybe 30,000 feet. And then on the ground, what are some practical things that we can do? So the first thing I would say is that I think what our people really want to hear is they want us to acknowledge that this is serious, but they also are hungering for vision, right? So they want us to acknowledge that, yeah, this is a really big deal. Not only the illness stuff, but because of all of the declarations that come from a lot of our bishops and the lack of public masses, a lack of public opportunities to gather. In addition, the economic massive impact this has had economically on so many people on all different levels, right? We have college students who are recent graduates who are being sometimes the first laid off. We have people who've been working for years, people working paycheck to paycheck. Like, this is a really big deal. And I think one of the things that our people are looking for is for us to let them know that we get that that's going on, that that's a part of their life right now. So to acknowledge the seriousness of the illness, to acknowledge the difficulty of not being able to have access to the sacraments like we have had in the past, and to be able to acknowledge the potential devastation of economically that's going on in people's lives. So acknowledging this, and then as you guys know, but to be able to offer them a vision in the midst of that, right? So in the midst of a crisis, no one wants to look up and see dad panicking. Like, in the midst of a crisis, no one wants to look up and see someone that is in charge, like, simply complaining about leadership or simply complaining about the situation. We do want them to acknowledge the situation and how difficult it is, but not to follow that route of complaining, but to provide a vision, to provide an opportunity to basically spell out, how is this an opportunity for me? Or how could it be an opportunity for me? Now, obviously, there's always going to be people who don't want to see this as an opportunity because it's just too painful. Or maybe they can't see it as an opportunity because it's just simply too painful. But if the first couple moves we can have are to acknowledge the difficulty in all the different levels, as well as provide a vision, that's going to go a really long ways. Because the fact is, if we're fathers, not without a family, we're fathers without access in some ways to our family. So how can we move forward? Obviously, because of the internet, look, here we are right now, able to make videos. We're able to write things and disseminate them to our parishes. We're able to post things on the internet. We're able to actually rally people in a social way, even if it's virtual, in a way that we had never been able to would never be able to do this in another kind of context or another situation in our history. And so, how do we take opportunity and take advantage in the midst of crisis? How do we acknowledge and how do we provide a vision? I would say, hopefully, you have either the email information or phone information or social media information of the people in your parish. Your parish likely has a website, and so that's kind of the landing spot for so many people. Maybe you've already, like, you're miles ahead of me right now, and you're already talking, like, we've already live streamed masses, we live stream messages, we are posting regularly on social media about like what's going on, how to handle the epidemic or pandemic, right? Like, all these elements, super good. Because that's essentially going to be how we can continue to speak into the lives of the people that we serve. So you've already figured that out. That's the practical stuff. What I want to offer is, what are some of the things that they're going to be looking for? As we've always heard from our parishioners, those people who like either say they got a lot out of a sermon or they got nothing out of a sermon. One of the things is that, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my life right now? And so go back to basics. Where are they at right now? They can be in a place of fear. They're in a place of a certain kind of isolation. There's a place of uncertainty. So all these are key words, essentially, or key things that our people are going through. So how do you speak into that uncertainty? How do you speak into that isolation? How do we apply the gospel to life? Now, that's the first kind of thing. One thing I've been trying to do is identify what is the reality, what's the lived reality day to day right now of our people. Because a lot of times people's home environments are not necessarily set up for them to thrive. When it comes to our students, they're going home, it's not necessarily set up for them to thrive. And so what will they struggle with? You can ask yourself these questions about your parishioners. What will they struggle with in isolation? A lot of our students, when they go home, they struggle with community or lack of community. And so we know that, okay, that's going to be a big deal. How do we address that? They're going to struggle with regular prayer. That's going to be a challenge for a lot of them, is to have a plan for prayer and have basically the encouragement, maybe even accountability to pray. They're going to struggle with faithfulness to daily duties. You might have parishioners who are expected to continue to work. Maybe they're expected to work from home. Maybe they're expected to get out of the house and work, depending on where you're at in the country right now. For our students, they are expected to be participating in online classes. And I saw a meme, or it was actually someone had tweeted about this. They said something about, in this time of uncertainty, in this time of, I would use the word discombobulation, people should just pay attention to the order that I've been living. I wake up every morning at 9 a.m. until 2 a.m. I'm on my phone, or something like that. It was funnier the way they said it. But what they're pointing out is that there can be a real difficulty with faithfulness to daily duties in the midst of this time. And so how do we speak into this? We remind people that there are three kind of pillar things they can do. One is they can do their best to remain in a state of grace. Secondly, they can do their daily duties. Like, what is it that I'm actually expected to do? And third is, how am I praying in this time? One of the things that I've found to be a struggle in quarantine, since I was traveling, I'm kind of in a self-quarantine situation, kind of maybe even a little more strict, trying to be a little more strict than others might need to be. I've been reminded of my difficulty with picking one task and following it through to the end. So I recognize this about me. I imagine that if I've got parishioners, I have a ton of students who are taking online classes, that might be a thing they're struggling with. If you have parishioners who are working from home, that might be a thing they're struggling with, because now maybe they have families, maybe they have spouses, and now the being away to be able to work is now a difficult thing. How can you speak into that? What about this? What about the fact that maybe a lot of your parishioners spend the bulk of their day away from their families, and now they're spending their entire time with their families? Like, maybe this is an opportunity to talk about couples issues. Maybe this is a good time to talk about what do you want your family to look like? How do you want to resolve conflict in your marriage? Because here's one of the things that I've just been coming back again and again. This first week of kind of this quarantine, we've been invited to be part of the quarantine. A lot of the talk is all about coronavirus, COVID-19. And I think at some point, that our parishioners are getting a little battle fatigued over just even hearing about the virus. Even to say the word coronavirus is kind of like oh, here we go again. At some point, if not very, very soon, what they're going to want to hear is not so much, how do you deal with quarantine, or how do you deal with all these things? It's going to be, how do I live? Like, how do I just live? Just keep giving me the gospel, keep giving me what is it to follow Christ. Not just what is it to follow Christ in a time of crisis, but what they're going to be looking for is, okay, my daily life right now is that I'm spending a lot of time with my family. And it's become really, really clear that we don't necessarily do this really well. Or maybe it's my daily life right now is I've been overwhelmed by uncertainty. So we're not necessarily talking directly about, coronavirus kind of stuff, but we're talking about the things that are underneath or the things that are behind what the things that have been revealed by the crisis in our lives right now. I hope that makes sense. Another thing is, so again, our students, our parishioners, struggling with community, with regular prayer, with faithfulness to daily duties, to living order well. With the loss of structure, with time wasters that just kind of creep into all of our lives, with, again, the internet, such a good thing. Here we are right now. But the internet also such a dangerous thing. Also not just time wasting kind of situations, but okay, how do I live a virtuous life when I'm in seclusion? Because there may be people who, have a lot of family time. There might be a lot of people who are who are very disconnected. And in that disconnection and in that darkness, are turning to dark things. So again, loss of structure, time wasters, and even to be able to speak into this, how can you speak into this? Time wasting versus time well spent, which is a massively different thing. To even talk about distraction. Again, one of the things that so many people are going to be going through, if they're not already going through, is this tendency towards distraction. I just keep wanting to distract myself. I'm going to waste my time versus spend my time really well. Maybe ultimately, in a crisis, our poverty gets revealed. In a crisis, our strength, our wealth gets revealed. So you can ask that question, what is being revealed? Again, it all comes back to the beginning. I'm going to acknowledge the seriousness of what's going on. I'm going to provide a vision for how to live in the midst of this and how to move forward. Again, I would invite myself really too, not to tie this to coronavirus, whatever, COVID-19. I want to tie this to their personal experiences of what they're going through in this moment. Because what they're going through has to do with daily life. It's just the fact that in the midst of this, I don't have a choice. In the midst of this, I'm being told what to do, where I can't go. In the midst of this, I'm not in control. And so many of us have the illusion of control. So many of us have the illusion of certainty. So many of us have the illusion of confidence. And in a crisis, that illusion dissipates, right? How do I acknowledge what they're going through, provide a vision for how to move through it? I think that right now, in this time, that would be absolutely fantastic. One last note for my brother priests. I want to share with you a document. It's very short. It's like a page and a half that one of the priests in our diocese, he compiled when it comes to celebrating Mass alone. I know that's not something that we typically do because we're encouraged not to do that. But there are some rubrics when it comes to celebrating the Mass on our own. If you find yourself saying your private Mass and you've never really figured out how is it exactly that I'm supposed to do this and what am I not supposed to do? Just want to offer that to you. Again, it was written by a priest in our diocese. He assembled it he's a faithful guy, right? He assembled it through going through the germ, I don't know, I always call it the germ, and the Code of Canon Law, and figuring out what is it that we can do, what we can't do, how do we do it? So hopefully that's a helpful tool for you as well. My brothers, we are united not only with our family, parishes, we're united in our brotherhood. Continue saying the Mass. I know that you probably are recognizing this, but I don't know, more than ever, but maybe more than ever, it's become painfully apparent to me how important it is for me to offer the Mass well, to say the Mass well, to pray the Mass well, not just for myself so I can become the man God wants me to be, but also for the people of God that Christ died for and rose from the dead for. There's a lot, I think in some ways, a lot on our shoulders. Some of it has to do with preaching, some of it has to do with teaching and getting the message out. A lot of it has to do with ourselves doing those things, remaining in a state of grace, doing our daily duties, and praying well as best we can, relying fully upon God's grace and cooperating with Him as much as we can. Anyways, that's just my thing. I know that for many of us who experience isolation, it can get to us too. How do we share in their isolation? How do we speak into their isolation? How do we speak into their uncertainty? How do we continue to build up our flock? Because this doesn't have to just be a time where we're sustained in our faith. This could be an incredible time where we grow in our faith.